The galaxy had known peace for centuries. The Grand Galactic Council had established a stable order, a delicate balance of power among the dominant species. The Zareth, towering beings of molten skin, governed the military. The Cyrex, a race of brilliant tacticians, handled diplomacy and strategy, and the Xian, an ancient race of telepaths, maintained the delicate equilibrium of the galaxy through subtle influence. Together, these three species formed the ruling triad that held the universe in a vice grip, while countless others bent the knee to their might. The human race, however, had been a mystery. Unassuming and scattered across dozens of habitable worlds, humans had long been dismissed as irrelevant. They were raw, brash, and unrefined, a far cry from the elegance and power of the galaxy's ruling species. But beneath their small, seemingly inconsequential presence, a flame of resistance flickered. On Earth, the center of humanity's influence, there was a growing movement. For decades, humans had endured the rule of the Galactic Council's agents, subtle, ever watchful, suppressing any sign of rebellion. Resources were extracted, technology was stolen, and the human spirit, once vibrant, had begun to wither. Yet, amid this stifling oppression, a whisper began to circulate, gaining traction across the stars. Dr. Elena Richter, a former scientist from Earth's most advanced research station, had uncovered something extraordinary. A pattern in the galactic fabric, an anomaly. While the rest of the galaxy had advanced, humans had been kept from achieving their full potential. They were being held back, purposefully isolated. The barrier was not physical, but something deeper, a psychic blockade, placed by the Xian, to prevent humanity from achieving their full potential. Richter's discovery was the first crack in the system. It was an answer to a question that had plagued humanity for centuries: why had the galaxy's rulers feared them? It was here that the revolution was born, not in the violent strikes of rebellion, but in the quiet, insistent search for truth. Dr. Richter gathered a small, but fiercely determined group of scientists, engineers, and philosophers. Together, they began to work in secret, developing technology that would break the psychic shackles that had been placed on humanity's collective consciousness. They created a device, a beacon, that could amplify the human mind and shield it from the psychic influence of the Xian. The first test was a failure, and the consequences were disastrous. The device overloaded, triggering a cascade of energy that disrupted the Council's surveillance systems, sending a wave of energy across the galaxy. For a brief moment, the Xian's influence faltered, and every human across the stars felt it. It was a brief moment of freedom, an awakening. The Council quickly mobilized, dispatching the Zareth and Cyrex to hunt down the source of the disturbance. But for Dr. Richter and her team, the failure was a wake-up call. They had confirmed what had been only a theory: humans could be more than just pawns in the galactic game. With this knowledge, they were no longer afraid. They began to rally the scattered human colonies, planting the seeds of a movement that would soon grow too large to contain. The first wave of resistance was slow, deliberate. The beacon's disruption had only been a test, but it had caught the attention of the galaxy. Across the outer rim, human colonies started organizing. The Zareth, with their unmatched strength, tried to quash these uprisings with brutal force. But humans fought back, not with the superior weapons or psychic power that the Council wielded, but with ingenuity and sheer willpower. They repurposed technology, hacked the Council's systems, and began to disrupt the galactic order. The Council was shaken. For the first time, they saw humans as more than mere insects to be squashed. The Zareth and Cyrex began to debate the growing threat, but the Xian, those who had always whispered in the background, sensed something even more dangerous. They felt the power of the human mind, unshackled, pushing against their influence. The very thought of humanity breaking free from their control sent a ripple of fear through the ancient telepaths. As the Council tightened its grip, the human revolution grew. It spread from colony to colony, each one more defiant than the last. And the spark that Dr. Richter had ignited now blazed across the stars. The galaxy's rulers may have thought that they held all the power, but they had underestimated the one thing that humans possessed in abundance: the relentless drive to fight for their freedom. The first victories of the human resistance were small but meaningful. pockets of insurgents, led by former soldiers, engineers, and even scientists like Dr. Elena Richter, began to appear across the galaxy. These groups didn't engage in large-scale battles, at least, not yet, but their impact was undeniable. They sabotaged supply lines, hijacked shipments of stolen technology, and broadcast messages of unity and defiance, rallying humans everywhere to their cause. One such group, the Freeborn, had managed to infiltrate a Cyrex supply vessel and seize a prototype communication relay. With it, they broadcast a message across dozens of planets. The time for silence is over. Humanity is no longer a tool of the Galactic Council. The shackles are broken. The revolution has begun. The message spread like wildfire, with resistance movements springing up from the core worlds to the remote colonies on the fringes of known space. Every human who heard it felt something stir within them, an ancient, instinctive drive to fight, to free themselves from centuries of subjugation. But the Council, though shaken, was not easily defeated. The Zareth, furious at the growing insurrection, retaliated with brutal force. They struck quickly, employing a strategy of overwhelming superiority to crush human resistance in key locations. Entire colonies were decimated, their populations slaughtered or enslaved, as a grim reminder of the price of defying the Galactic Council. Yet, for every setback, humanity proved more resilient. The revolutionaries learned quickly, adapting to their enemies' tactics, and discovered new ways to fight back. They used guerrilla warfare, striking at vulnerable points in the Council's infrastructure. They hacked the Zaretha's communication networks, spreading disinformation and disrupting their war machines. They found new allies, other oppressed species who had long been subjugated by the Council, but had lacked the spark of rebellion that humans had now ignited. One such species was the Clanth, a race of large, quadrupedal beings whose strength was unmatched. They had been used as slaves for millennia, tasked with the laborious work of mining precious minerals in the depths of barren moons. Their freedom was a dream that had long since died, but as the humans' revolution spread, they saw a flicker of hope. The Clanth did not immediately join the human cause, but their loyalty was earned when a small human cell, led by a former soldier named Commander Nathan Kane, liberated a Clanth labor camp. Kane's team fought their way through the Zareth guards, risking their lives to rescue Clanth workers who had been forced into unimaginable conditions. When the battle was won and the Clanth were freed, Kane addressed them, standing before the towering beasts. "We fight for more than just ourselves," Kane said, his voice steady and clear. We fight for the right to live as we choose, not as tools for the Galactic Council. Stand with us, and we will change the galaxy together. The Clanth, moved by the words of the humans, agreed to join the revolution. In return, the humans provided them with advanced weapons and technology that the Clanth had never imagined possible. With their strength and the humans' ingenuity, the Clanth became a key ally in the growing war against the Council. As the revolution spread, so did the Council's fear. The Xian, in their floating citadels, watched the chaos unfold through their telepathic connection to the galaxy's many species. The subtle, psychic influence they had once wielded so effortlessly was now under threat. They had underestimated the humans, and now, for the first time in centuries, they felt vulnerable. The Council convened in an emergency meeting. The Zareth demanded immediate military action to crush the human insurgents. The Cyrex, ever the strategists, suggested a more measured approach, seeking to use diplomacy to quell the unrest. But the Xian, silent for most of the proceedings, finally spoke. "We cannot allow them to continue," said Mirkel, the eldest and most powerful of the Xian. The humans are a threat unlike any we have faced before. They have awakened something that cannot be controlled. They must be eradicated, or they will reshape the galaxy in their image. The decision was made. The Council would strike back in full force. They would not only target the human resistance but also take the fight to the very heart of humanity's worlds. The Zareth would mobilize their war fleets, the Cyrex would negotiate false peace to divide the rebels, and the Xian would use their psychic might to shatter the human will. But even as the Council rallied its forces, one thing was clear: the human revolution was no longer a whisper in the dark. It had become a force that could no longer be ignored. And though the Council's response would be swift and brutal, the humans had already made their mark. The galaxy would never be the same again. The full force of the Galactic Council descended upon the human resistance with terrifying speed. The Zareth war fleets, massive and relentless, swept across human-held worlds, laying waste to colonies in a show of overwhelming might. The Cyrex, masters of strategy, coordinated the attack with precision, using their political influence to turn neutral planets into hostile territory, pushing back human support at every turn. The Xian, from their citadels, expanded their telepathic reach, attempting to crush the revolution at its core by manipulating minds and sowing discord. But humanity was not unprepared. The beacon that Dr. Richter and her team had developed, a signal that could unshackle human minds, was only the beginning. The revolutionaries had gone far beyond that, advancing the technology in ways even the Cyrex didn't anticipate. Using captured Zareth weaponry, human scientists had created a series of hyper-efficient defense systems, disruptors capable of scrambling the Zaretha's energy-based weapons. They had developed stealth technologies that allowed their ships to slip past enemy sensors undetected, launching devastating surprise attacks against Council fleets. Humans had a habit of turning their enemies' strengths into weaknesses, and it was this unpredictability that made them dangerous. Commander Nathan Kane, now an iconic figure within the revolution, knew that the Council would target Earth, the beating heart of the human race. As the resistance mounted a desperate defense, Kane's fleet gathered in secret, ready to fight a war of attrition, knowing that Earth's survival would dictate the future of the revolution. If Earth fell, so too would the hope of freedom. The first strike came on the moon of Vespera, a colony where the Clanth had begun to establish their presence. The Zareth fleet arrived in force, their colossal warships blinding the sky. The human forces had anticipated this, and Commander Kane had prepared an ambush. Using an array of cloaking devices and long-range weapons, the humans struck first, taking down Zareth warships with pinpoint precision. But the Zareth retaliated, sending a brutal ground assault to sweep through the colony. The Clanth, with their immense strength, fought side by side with the humans, holding back the Zareth long enough for civilians to escape to safety. The battle was fierce, but the humans' tenacity shone through. They repurposed the Zaretha's own war machines against them, using captured Zareth fighters to rain destruction on their enemies. Human ingenuity, coupled with the Clantha's sheer power, forced the Zareth to retreat, but not without paying a heavy price. Though Vespera had been a victory, the toll was high. Hundreds of human lives were lost, and countless Clanth warriors had fallen. But it was enough to send a powerful message to the galaxy: humans would not be crushed. The resistance had the will to fight, and to win. Meanwhile, the Cyrex used their sharp minds to sow chaos within the human ranks. They began planting misinformation, creating false flags and dividing the revolutionaries through covert psychological warfare. Many worlds on the outskirts of the galaxy began to falter, questioning whether the revolution could truly succeed against the might of the Council. But Dr. Richter, working tirelessly with her team, had anticipated the Cyrex's cunning. She had developed an encrypted communication system, immune to the Cyrex's telepathic interference. With it, she was able to rally the fragmented cells of the human resistance, ensuring that the fight was not lost to treachery. As the battle raged across the stars, the Xian finally decided to intervene directly. The ancient telepaths, who had long remained in the shadows, began using their psychic powers to influence key figures within the revolution. They attempted to reach into the minds of the resistance leaders, whispering doubts, fears, and confusion. They attempted to isolate Dr. Richter, to break her spirit and shatter the unity she had forged. But the Xian had underestimated the power of the human mind, its ability to resist, to fight back against manipulation. The very same beacon that had freed humans from their psychic chains became their greatest weapon against the Xian. In a daring mission, Richter herself, along with a team of elite rebels, infiltrated a Xian citadel deep within uncharted space. The citadel was a towering structure, floating in the void, where the most powerful of the Xian meditated and manipulated the galaxy's flow of events. There, Richter and her team encountered a force unlike any they had ever seen. The Zeon's psychic energy swirled around them like a storm, but Richter had prepared. Using a modified version of the human amplification device, she projected a psychic shield strong enough to block the Zeon's influence. For the first time, the Zeon realized that their power was not invincible. In a moment of pure, unfiltered human defiance, Richter confronted Mirkel, the eldest of the Zeon, in the heart of the citadel. "We are not your tools," Richter declared, her voice steady despite the overwhelming presence of the Zeon. "We are humanity. And we will rise." The confrontation was brief but symbolic. The Zeon, for all their power, could not bend the will of humans. The message was clear: the revolution was not just about survival. It was about reclaiming humanity's place in the galaxy, a place they would no longer be denied. As the battle continued to escalate, the revolutionaries knew that the final confrontation was coming. The Council would throw everything it had at humanity. But what they failed to see was that the rebellion was no longer a collection of scattered cells. It was a united force, a force that had been awakened, and a force that would stop at nothing to tear the old order asunder. The human revolution had become unstoppable. The war between the human resistance and the Galactic Council reached a boiling point. After the devastating battle for Vespera and the infiltration of the Zeon Citadel, the galaxy had shifted. The revolution was no longer a mere nuisance to the Council, it was an existential threat. The Zareth, furious after losing face in the Outer Rim, began to commit even greater resources to their military efforts, and the Cyrex launched an all-out propaganda campaign, attempting to fracture the human alliance from within. But for the humans, the stakes had never been clearer. Earth was under threat. The Council knew that if they could break the spirit of Earth's defenders, they could break the revolution. The ultimate goal was to strike at the heart of humanity's power, its homeworld. Commander Nathan Kane, battle-hardened and resolute, received word of the impending Council offensive. Intelligence reports confirmed that a combined Zareth-Cyrex fleet was already on its way to Earth. A final, decisive battle was looming, one that would determine the fate of the galaxy. Despite the overwhelming odds, Kane knew that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its technology or its numbers, it was in its spirit. No matter how powerful the Council's forces were, humanity had something that none of them could understand: the will to never give up, to fight for their freedom no matter the cost. In the shadow of the coming storm, a decision was made: humanity would not only defend Earth, they would take the fight to the heart of the Council itself. The revolution would escalate to a full-scale war, an all-or-nothing gambit to reclaim the galaxy. The Freeborn, the Clanth, and other allied species had formed a coalition under Kane's leadership. In secret, human engineers had developed a new class of star ships, the Hammer-class dreadnoughts. Equipped with the latest in disruptor technology, advanced shields, and warp drives that could outpace the fastest Council ships, these vessels were humanity's answer to the Council's superior fleets. But more than that, they represented humanity's refusal to be crushed. They were a symbol of rebellion, of defiance in the face of extinction. As the Hammer-class ships gathered near Earth's orbit, the revolutionaries launched a counteroffensive against the Council's flanking fleets. Dr. Elena Richter, now revered as the mastermind behind the psychic disruption technology, had perfected the human amplification beacon. With the device, she could not only shield human minds from the Zeon's influence but could now project a psychic pulse strong enough to disrupt the telepathic control the Zeon held over other species. This new development gave the Resistance a rare opportunity to free oppressed species across the galaxy and turn them into allies. The Zaretha's war machine moved relentlessly toward Earth, but Kane and his forces had a plan. The Hammer-class ships, alongside Clanth battalions and Freeborn starfighters, engaged the Zareth fleet in a series of brutal skirmishes across the outer rim of the solar system. The Zareth had the strength, but humanity had the will, and the tactics. Each skirmish was designed to exhaust the enemy, wear them down, and divide their forces. The war was now being fought not only in space, but in the minds of the galaxy's inhabitants. Meanwhile, Richter's beacon was activated, sending out waves of psychic pulses that reached far beyond Earth's orbit. The pulses cut through the veil of Zeon influence like a blade, sending shockwaves throughout Council-held space. The impact was immediate. Worlds once under the sway of the Xian were liberated as their inhabitants, free from the telepathic manipulation, turned against the Council. On the planet Archelon, home to the once subjugated Rians, an amphibious species, resistance forces had been quietly gaining strength under the leadership of a Rian named Korlok. The Xian had long controlled the minds of the Rians, using them as enforcers for the Council's will. But as the psychic pulse washed over Archelon, the Xian's grip faltered, and the Rians, now free, rose up in a tidal wave of fury. They tore through the Zareth fortifications and joined the revolution. This was only the beginning. One by one, the oppressed species of the galaxy began to rally behind the banner of human freedom. The Cyrex, ever the schemers, tried to manipulate the tide of war with political subterfuge, offering false treaties and promises to break the alliances forming against them. But even their tactics were losing their potency, as every species now saw the truth: the Council had lied to them for centuries. They were all pawns in a game that was no longer in their control. Back on Earth, the final battle began. The Zareth fleet, weakened from the long campaign across the galaxy, now advanced toward the planet, their overwhelming numbers ready to crush humanity once and for all. Cain, leading the charge, issued a call to arms across every human-held world. The revolutionaries had one last chance to ensure the galaxy would never again fall under the Council's rule. The Hammer-class dreadnoughts surged forward, followed by the human and allied fleets. For the first time, the human resistance faced the full might of the Zareth and Cyrex forces in a battle for the fate of Earth. It was a battle of sheer will, on the ground, in space, and even in the minds of the warriors who fought. As the battle raged, Commander Cain's flagship, the Elysium's Wrath, launched a daring maneuver. They would strike at the heart of the Zareth fleet, targeting the flagship of the entire assault. With the guidance of Dr. Richter's beacon, Cain and his crew navigated through the enemy lines, determined to end the war once and for all. But victory would not come easily. The Council was relentless, and even the combined strength of the human revolution seemed almost insufficient to bring them down. But humanity had already proven one thing: their resolve was the one thing the Council could never truly defeat. And as Earth's fate hung in the balance, one truth remained certain: humanity would rise to meet the challenge, no matter what it cost. The battle for Earth had reached its darkest hour. The human resistance, bolstered by allies from the farthest reaches of the galaxy, clashed with the full might of the Galactic Council in the orbit of the homeworld. The skies above Earth were filled with the sounds of battle: the explosive rattle of disruptor fire, the roaring engines of Hammer-class dreadnoughts, and the screeching impact of enemy ships ripping apart under fire. Commander Nathan Cain's flagship, the Elysium's Wrath, was at the heart of the conflict. Its hull, scarred from battle and battle again, was now pushed to its limits. The Hammer-class ships had taken the brunt of the Zareth assault, but they were not invincible. Zareth warships, larger and more heavily armed, had surrounded them, pounding away with relentless firepower. The Cyrex, meanwhile, launched wave after wave of telepathic strikes against the minds of human soldiers and their allies, hoping to sow confusion and turn the tide of battle. But for every wave of attack, there was a counterwave of defiance. Humanity had always been resilient, and now, more than ever, it was clear that they would never give up. Human minds, newly liberated from the influence of the Xian, fought back against the telepathic manipulation with strength and unity. And on the ground, human soldiers and their allies battled with a desperation that only comes when all hope seems lost. On Earth's surface, cities had become war zones. The human resistance had fortified key locations, preparing for the inevitable ground assault by the Zaretha's massive legions. The Clanth warriors, their hulking frames now a symbol of strength for the resistance, fought side by side with the humans, holding the line at every cost. Earth's military forces, once disorganized and scattered, had become an unstoppable force of their own, coordinating strikes with guerrilla precision. The human spirit had once again proven that it could not be broken. But it was the battle in the skies, above the cities, above the mountains, and the oceans, that would determine Earth's fate. At the heart of the Zareth fleet was their flagship, Judgment's Fury, an immense vessel that dwarfed any human or allied ship. It was the nerve center of the entire invasion. If it could be destroyed, the Zareth would lose their command, and the rebellion could have a fighting chance. Cain knew what had to be done. The Elysium's wrath was already taking heavy fire, but it was the only ship capable of making the desperate run to the flagship. Cain issued the order to execute a final attack, knowing full well that it could be a suicide mission. The fate of humanity, the galaxy's future, and the rebellion itself rested on this one final, desperate act. The Elysium's wrath made a break for it, weaving through enemy fire and engaging in a deadly game of cat and mouse with Zareth ships. The crew, including Dr. Richter, whose amplified psychic shield had been crucial in keeping the Zeon at bay, held their breath as the massive Zareth warships fired on their position. Each blast rocked the ship to its core, but they pressed on. "We make this count," Cain growled, his voice steady over the comms, his expression set in grim determination. "This is for Earth. For the future." The Elysium's wrath surged forward, its weapons fully charged, and with one final, brilliant strike, launched a barrage of disruptor fire aimed at the Judgment's Fury's engines. The shot hit its mark, piercing through the thick shields and striking at the heart of the Zareth flagship. The vessel shuddered, massive sections of its hull breaking off, and fire began to erupt from its core. But the Zareth were not done. As the flagship faltered, they launched their final assault. A colossal wave of Zareth soldiers, led by their most elite warriors, descended toward Earth's surface. It was their last bid to crush the human resistance and end the revolution. In the midst of the chaos, Dr. Richter, aboard the Elysium's wrath, activated the full power of her beacon, its pulse sent across the galaxy once more, sending a psychic shockwave that reverberated from Earth all the way to the edges of known space. It was the culmination of all her research, her sacrifices, and the collective will of every human who had fought for their freedom. The Zeon's hold on the galaxy shattered. The Zareth, momentarily stunned by the psychic disruption, faltered in their attack, and in that precious window of opportunity, humanity struck back. On Earth's surface, the Clanth, the Freeborn, the Rians, and countless other species who had joined the revolution launched a final, coordinated assault. The Zareth, disoriented and disorganized from the psychic blow, were now overwhelmed. Human soldiers, bolstered by their allies, engaged them in vicious hand-to-hand combat, forcing them back with sheer determination and willpower. The battle raged for hours, but as the sun began to set over the war-torn Earth, the last remnants of the Zareth were defeated. The Judgment's fury exploded in a massive, blinding burst of light, marking the end of the Zareth's invasion. Commander Cain stood on the bridge of the Elysium's wrath, watching as the remnants of the Zareth fleet fled into the dark void of space. His crew, battered and bloodied but alive, let out a collective cheer. Earth was saved. The war, however, was far from over. The Cyrex still held power, and the Zeon were not so easily defeated. But for the first time in centuries, the Council had been forced to retreat. Humanity had proven something to the galaxy that no one could ignore. They were no longer a species to be dismissed. They had defied the odds, stood against the might of the Galactic Council, and forged their own destiny. The revolution was far from over. But the humans, united in spirit and resolve, were ready for whatever came next. The galaxy had been changed forever. And humanity's place within it had been secured. The dawn of a new era had begun. In the wake of the colossal battle for Earth, the Galactic Council lay in ruin. Its once formidable unity had crumbled under the relentless force of humanity's revolution. The Zareth fleet, once the epitome of power, had scattered into the depths of space, their once proud flagship, Judgment's Fury, now nothing more than a shattered wreck drifting in the void. The Cyrex, their telepathic influence crippled, retreated into isolation, their once infallible strategies now in tatters. The Zeon, their ancient grip on the galaxy's minds disrupted by Richter's amplification beacon, were no longer the unseen puppet masters they had once been. But the victory had not come without sacrifice. Earth, though victorious, lay in ruins. Its cities, once gleaming symbols of human achievement, were now scarred by war. The infrastructure was shattered, and countless lives had been lost. Yet, amidst the destruction, there was hope. The revolution had ignited a flame of freedom that could never be extinguished. Humanity had shown the galaxy what they were capable of. They were a force to be reckoned with, not just in battle, but in their capacity for unity and resilience. Commander Nathan Kane, having led the charge in the final battle, now found himself at the helm of a new galaxy, a galaxy on the cusp of profound change. The Resistance, once a ragtag group of rebels, had become the foundation of a new order. It was time to rebuild, but not just Earth, the entire galaxy star. With the fall of the Council, many of the alien species that had once been oppressed under their rule were now free. The Rians, the Clanth, the Freeborn, and countless others were now coming together, their once fractured worlds uniting under a single banner, the banner of humanity. While humanity had once been the oppressed, it was now the leader of the galaxy's rebirth. The formation of the Galactic Federation, a newly conceived union of liberated species, began immediately. Kane, once a symbol of rebellion, became the leader of this newly formed government. The Federation's goal was not just to resist the Council but to ensure that the mistakes of the past would never be repeated. It would be a government where every species, from the smallest insectoid life form to the largest, most powerful beings, had a voice. Every species would be equal in this new order, and humanity would be the shepherd, not the ruler. Dr. Elena Richter, whose scientific brilliance had been crucial in disrupting the Zeon's mental manipulation, was appointed the head of the Federation's Scientific Council. Her work was far from finished. Her research into human amplification technology could be the key to securing a lasting peace throughout the galaxy. But even she knew that this peace would be fragile if the Federation didn't heal the wounds left by the Council's centuries of tyranny. As Kane prepared to address the Federation's first assembly, Earth's reconstruction began in earnest. The remnants of the old world, though battered, would be reborn. The human spirit, tested and tempered by war, would rise again. There was no going back. Earth would lead, but it would also learn to listen, to adapt, and to evolve. The Federation would not be based on domination but on cooperation. But not all was peaceful. The Council's remnants, broken and scattered, were still a threat. A splinter faction of Zareth loyalists, refusing to accept their defeat, began gathering in the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Though the main threat was over, they remained a ticking time bomb. Similarly, the Cyrex, though defeated in the psychic battle, had not yet relinquished their grasp on the political power they had cultivated for millennia. The Zeon, though weakened, were still far from powerless. Kane knew that this peace was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and even in victory, there were enemies in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike. The human revolution had ignited something much larger than anyone had anticipated. It was no longer just about the survival of humanity, it was about the future of the galaxy itself. He stood before the Federation Assembly, the eyes of the galaxy's leaders upon him. The room, a vast circular chamber that seemed to stretch into infinity, was filled with representatives from every liberated species. The Clanth, their warriors still scarred from the battles they had fought alongside humanity, stood proud. The Freeborn, their advanced civilization having once teetered on the edge of collapse, now looked to humanity for leadership. Even the Rian ambassador, Korlok, had taken his place as one of the galaxy's new leaders. The revolution was not just about taking down an empire, Kane began, his voice resonating with authority and humility. It was about creating a future where we can all stand side by side. The galaxy has suffered for too long, but now, we have a chance to rebuild. Together. We are no longer bound by the chains of the past. The Federation will stand for peace, for equality, for freedom. His words resonated deeply with the assembled leaders. There was a collective feeling in the room, a sense of shared purpose, a realization that they had just begun to write a new chapter in the galaxy's history. But even as Kane spoke of unity, Richter was already working in the background, pushing her research into new and uncharted territory. There were rumors, whispers among the Federation's highest ranks, that the amplification technology might be the key to ending all conflict once and for all, that it could allow the Federation to reach a state of psychic unity, where all species could truly communicate without the need for force or manipulation. However, Richter herself was unsure. What if such power was too great? What if they were on the verge of creating something that could undo all the work they had done? The stakes had never been higher. As the Federation began its first steps into the future, new threats loomed on the horizon. The galaxy had been forever changed, but the seeds of new challenges were being sown. The remnants of the Council still festered in the shadows, waiting to strike. Humanity and its allies had won the battle, but the war for the soul of the galaxy was far from over. The Federation was born from the fires of revolution, but it would need to stand strong in the face of those who would see it burn. Only time would tell if this new order could survive. One thing was certain: humanity, united and undaunted, would never stop fighting for their place in the stars. The galaxy would no longer be ruled by fear, it would be ruled by those brave enough to seize their future. And humanity had already proven they were more than capable of doing just that. The rebirth of the galaxy had begun. And the revolution was only just starting. The first year of the Galactic Federation's existence was marked by both hope and turmoil. The immediate aftermath of the human-led revolution saw a galaxy that was still in chaos, but it was a chaos of opportunity. Freed from the shackles of the Council, countless planets and species, once silenced under the yoke of tyranny, were now able to shape their own futures. Yet, with such freedom came uncertainty. Humanity's place as the cornerstone of the Federation was solidified, but not without contention. Some species, though liberated, were hesitant to place their full trust in the hands of those who had once been an underdog force in the galaxy. The Freeborn, known for their technological prowess, argued for a more balanced leadership, believing that human dominance could lead to a new form of tyranny. The Rians, still recovering from years of mental subjugation under the Xian, feared the possibility of another species taking control in subtle, manipulative ways. It was up to Commander Nathan Kane, now president of the Galactic Federation, to navigate this turbulent new world. He had fought to unite the galaxy, but now he had to hold that unity together. As he sat in the High Council chambers, surrounded by leaders of the newly formed Federation, the gravity of his position weighed heavily on him. The galaxy was looking to him for direction, but the path ahead was fraught with challenges. "We have a chance to build something greater," Kane said, his voice steady yet full of conviction. "We've fought for this. Now, we must work together to make it a reality. The Federation is not just a union of planets. It's a promise that we will never fall into the darkness of the Council again. We must stay vigilant, but we must also stay united. We cannot afford to become the very thing we fought against." His words resonated with many of the Council members, but there were still skeptics. The Clanth ambassador, a towering figure with a deep, gravelly voice, was among those who hesitated. "We have seen power corrupt before, Kane," he rumbled. "You speak of unity, but how will you ensure that humanity does not become the oppressor?" Kane met the Clantha's gaze, his expression resolute. "That is why the Federation must be built on transparency and equality. I am here as a leader, but not as a ruler. The Federation is a council of voices, not a monarchy. We will build systems of checks and balances. Every species will have an equal say in the future we shape." Across the galaxy, the Federation's influence began to spread. Earth was still in the process of recovering from the devastation of war, but humanity's resilience was evident. New cities were rising from the ashes, and the human population, alongside their allies, worked tirelessly to rebuild. Yet, even as reconstruction efforts flourished, whispers of dissent echoed through the galaxy. The remnants of the Zareth warlords were still scattered, regrouping in the outer reaches. The Cyrex, though in retreat, had not forgotten their ambitions. And the Xian, broken but not defeated, were slowly gathering their strength in the far corners of space. Kane, aware of these threats, turned his focus to ensuring the Federation remained strong. He dispatched emissaries to every corner of the galaxy, working to ensure that the diverse species that had risen up to fight alongside humanity would not lose sight of the shared mission, to build a galaxy where tyranny could never again take root. Meanwhile, Dr. Elena Richter's work with the amplification technology had taken a surprising turn. Her beacon, once used to disrupt the Xian's psychic control, was now being adapted to a new purpose. She had begun experimenting with the idea of a psychic network, a communication system where every member of the Federation, regardless of species, could directly communicate with one another. The potential for peace seemed tantalizing, but Richter, ever the cautious scientist, wondered what the long-term effects of such a system would be. Would this psychic network bind the galaxy together, or would it strip away the individuality of the species who used it? One night, as Richter pondered the implications of her discoveries, Kane visited her lab. He stood in the doorway, watching her work in silence for a moment before speaking. "Do you think we're building a future or just delaying the inevitable?" Kane asked, his tone softer than usual. Richter paused, looking up from her terminal. "I think we're building a future," she replied quietly. "But it's fragile. We've only just begun. There are forces out there, forces that want to see us fall. And if we're not careful, if we don't learn from the mistakes of the past, we could end up repeating them." Kane nodded, his eyes steely with determination. "Then we'll stay vigilant. We'll make sure the Federation is built to last. And if those forces come for us again, we'll be ready." As the Federation's reach expanded, its leaders understood that they could never grow complacent. The galaxy was a vast and unpredictable place, and even in victory, threats loomed large. But in the midst of uncertainty, something undeniable had shifted. Humanity had proven that even in the darkest of times, they could stand tall and rise against the greatest of odds. They had liberated the galaxy from the Council's grip, and in doing so, had forged a future where anything seemed possible. The dawn of a new era had arrived, a time of rebuilding, of hope, and of healing. But it was also a time of vigilance, for the shadows of the past were never truly gone. The Federation had won its first battle, but the war for the soul of the galaxy would continue. And humanity, once the underdog, had shown that it was more than capable of leading the way. The galaxy was forever changed. And humanity's place within it had been secured. The revolution had succeeded. But the journey was far from over. As new challenges emerged, the Federation stood ready to face them. And with each passing day, humanity's legacy grew stronger, an unstoppable force, not just in war, but in the hearts of those who now called the stars their home. The galaxy had been reborn, and humanity had become its torchbearer. The future was theirs to shape.